My parents didn't even wait for the door to close before the suitcase hit the porch. It landed with a heavy thud on the frozen wood, the sound echoing in the quiet winter air like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence I'd been trying not to read for years. Snow drifted lazily under the porch light, catching on the zipper, the handle, the fabric scraped from too many moves I never chose. My mother crossed her arms, her breath curling into the cold night like steam from a boiling pot. My father didn't look at me. He stared at the driveway instead, jaw tight, like he was bracing for an argument he'd already won in his head. My sister. She laughed. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just softly. A smirk, really, the kind that reveals more about a person than any full-blown outburst ever could. Well, she said, brushing her perfect hair over her shoulder, let's see how you manage. The wind sliced through my sweater, sharp enough to make my shoulders tense. Thanksgiving Eve. My family's favorite holiday. Roast cooking, pies cooling, the house always full of guests and warmth. Except tonight, none of that warmth belonged to me. My name is Charlotte Hale. I'm 30 years old, and on Thanksgiving Eve, my parents threw me out with nothing but a suitcase and the clothes on my back. What I didn't know was that within an hour, a barefoot woman would cross my path, and everything I thought I understood about family, loyalty, and belonging would begin to unravel. If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. It means more than you know. I stood there for a long moment on the porch, the cold biting into my skin, the quiet turning sharper with every breath. The street was lined with houses wrapped in holiday lights, warm yellows, deep reds, soft blues. Behind each window, silhouettes moved, families laughed, dinner tables glowed. And there I was. Outside. This. Disposable. Take your things, my father said finally, voice flat. You can figure the rest out. He turned back inside, the warm air rushing out momentarily before the door clicked shut. My mother lingered for half a second longer. Her eyes flicked to the snow, the suitcase, my trembling hands, and then she closed the door too. The lock turned. Final. Cling. I remember a drifting memory from childhood, 8 years old, building a snowman in the backyard. My gloves were too thin and I cried when the ice seeped through the seams. My mother stood watching from the kitchen window, unmoving. My sister opened the back door and yelled, "Stop crying. You're embarrassing us." Back then I thought maybe I was embarrassing. Tonight the cold felt the same. So did the silence. I grabbed the handle of the suitcase, the metal stiff with frost, and stepped off the porch. The wind gusted, sending a spray of powdered snow across the yard. Street lamps hummed above, flickering slightly like tired guardians. I walked. Nowhere to go. No plan. Just forward. The town park was a few blocks away, a place with peeling paint on the benches and evergreen trees that always smelled faintly of pine and something older. When I reached it, breathless from the cold, I set the suitcase beside the first bench and sat. The wood was freezing. The snow beneath my boots crunched softly. Across the street, a bakery had just closed. The smell of warm bread lingered in the air, mixing with the clean winter scent. That's when I saw her. A woman. Barefoot. Walking slowly down the sidewalk. Her face was purplish from the cold, her hair sticking to her cheeks, her coat thin enough to let the wind slice straight through. She moved like someone used to being overlooked. Head down, steps careful, like she didn't want to disturb the world that had already decided not to see her. My heart clenched. She couldn't have been older than 50. Maybe younger. But the cold had aged her. I watched her approach the bench across from mine. She lowered herself with a soft wince, pulling her coat tighter around her chest. Her feet, bare and raw, pressed into the snow. Something inside me shifted. Not pity. Recognition. I knew what it felt like to be someone nobody made room for. I stood slowly and walked toward her. The wind whipped at my coat. My teeth chattered. When I reached her, she startled. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I didn't mean to scare you." She blinked up at me with wide, glassy eyes. "It's all right." Her voice trembled, not from fear but from cold. I looked down at my boots, warm, lined, dry. Then at her feet, purple, cracked, buried in snow. Without thinking, I crouched and began unlacing my boots. Her eyes flew open. "No, no, what are you doing?" "Please," I said quietly. "Take them." She shook her head, tears forming instantly from the cold. "You'll freeze." "I'll manage." My fingers were stiff as I slid the boots off and pushed them gently toward her. She hesitated. Then she took them. Her hands shook as she pulled them on, each movement slow and painful. When she looked up at me again, her eyes were shining, not with gratitude but with something deeper. Something like recognition. "Thank you," she whispered. I nodded and stepped back, the snow burning my sock-covered feet. The cold seeped in almost instantly. She stood, slowly, purposefully, and then she walked away. I stood there shivering, hugging my arms around myself, breathing into my hands for warmth. The park was silent except for the wind rustling through the evergreen branches. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I was about to pick up my suitcase and leave when I heard an engine. Then another. And another. And another. Headlights flooded the park. Black SUVs, sleek, polished, identical, rolled onto the curb one by one until 19 of them formed a half-circle around me. My breath caught. The engines idled, humming in low unison. A door opened. Then another. And another. Men in black coats stepped out, tall, silent, coordinated like a single organism. And then, from the first SUV, she stepped out. The barefoot woman. Now wearing my boots. But everything else was different. Her coat was gone, replaced by a tailored black one that shimmered under the streetlights. Her shoulders were squared. Her posture commanding. Her eyes, no longer glassy and unfocused, were sharp, alert, electric. She walked toward me through the snow, each step measured. I couldn't breathe. The wind stilled. Even the cars seemed to quiet themselves. She stopped in front of me, looked directly into my eyes, and spoke one sentence. One sentence that shifted everything I thought I knew about kindness, consequences, and the power of giving without expecting anything in return. The woman stood inches from me, the night air swirling around her coat like smoke curling from embers. Snowflakes clung to her dark hair, melting into thin glistening strands. Her breath came out soft, even, nothing like the trembling gasp she'd taken earlier when she'd been barefoot in the cold. But now she held herself like someone who never shivered. Like someone who was used to being surrounded by 19 black SUVs and men who listened without question. Her eyes softened as she looked at me. And then she spoke the single sentence that made my pulse thrum in my ears. "You passed the test no one else ever has." The words hung in the cold air, suspended between us like a secret waiting to unfold. "The test? Me?" I opened my mouth but no words came out. The snow beneath my thin socks was burning cold, numbing my toes faster than I could register the pain. But the shock of her statement overpowered everything. She glanced down at my socks and smiled, not unkindly, but with a knowing that made the hair on my arms rise. "You shouldn't stay in the cold any longer," she said gently. "Come." One of the men stepped forward immediately, removing his own gloves and offering them to me with a respectful nod. The gesture was so unexpected, so opposite of everything I just lived through at my parents' house, that my throat tightened. I slid the gloves on. They were warm, still carrying leftover heat from his hands. Where are we going?" Finally managed. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. "We're going somewhere warm. Somewhere safe." Then to my surprise, "Somewhere you deserve to be." Deserve. A word my family had never used for me except as a weapon. A drifting memory surfaced. The kind that floats up only when something breaks clean inside you. I was 10, sitting cross-legged on my bedroom floor, holding a birthday card I'd made for my mother. I'd spent hours drawing it, stars, flowers, careful curls of handwriting. When I gave it to her, she barely glanced at it. "Don't make a mess," she said. And she tossed it onto the counter with spare receipts and junk mail. Even then, at 10, I learned that love in that house wasn't measured by kindness, but by convenience. But tonight, in a snowy park beneath humming streetlights, a stranger was offering me more warmth than my own family ever had. I followed her toward the first SUV, my suitcase still sitting on the bench. One of the men retrieved it silently, placing it into the trunk as though it contained something precious. "Please," he said, motioning to the back seat. The inside of the vehicle was warm, rich leather, faintly scented with cedar and something expensive I couldn't name. The heater hummed. I rubbed my hands together, feeling the blood return to my fingers. The woman climbed in beside me. Up close, she looked completely different from the trembling figure on the bench. Her posture straight, her eyes clear and calculating, her voice steady. What test did I pass?" I asked softly. She turned to me, the corner of her mouth lifting. I've been watching people all week, she said. Dozens of them. I needed to know who would give without being asked. Who would help a stranger without hesitation. Who would give up comfort when they themselves had so little. Her eyes softened again. You were the only one. A quiet chill ran down my spine, one not caused by cold. I wasn't testing charity, she continued. I was testing character. Character. Another word I'd never heard spoken to me with sincerity. Outside, the line of SUVs began moving, engines purring low as they turned onto the main road. Snow swirled in the headlights, glowing like ash in a winter fireplace. I swallowed. Why me? I'm nobody. She shook her head. No. You're someone who gave away her last warmth in the middle of winter. That makes you extraordinary. My eyes burned suddenly with a sting I wasn't expecting. Tears formed before I could hide them. I turned my head slightly embarrassed. My family doesn't think so. She exhaled softly, leaning back in her seat. Families can be wrong. The sentence cut straight through me. Simple, gentle, devastatingly true. We drove for several minutes in silence. The city blurred past, snow-covered rooftops, glowing windows, a gas station sign flickering in the wind. The heater hummed. My heartbeat slowed. My toes tingled painfully as they warmed. Finally, the SUV turned onto a long private drive lined with tall evergreens. Their branches hung heavy with snow, creating a quiet tunnel of white. Warm lights glimmered ahead. I whispered, "Where are we?" The woman smiled softly. "By home." The drive widened, revealing an estate, not gaudy, not flashy, but serene and sprawling, glowing with soft lantern light in the snowfall. A place built for quiet power, not show. When we stepped inside, heat enveloped me instantly. The air smelled like firewood and citrus. A marble floor glistened under warm lighting. Soft music played faintly from somewhere deeper in the house. He turned to me. "Let me show you something." She led me to a room lined with photographs. Women, men, children, all smiling, all dressed warmly, all standing beside her in various countries, seasons, cities. "These," she said, touching a frame gently, "are the people who helped me when I had nothing." I stared at the images, faces lit by kindness, by connection, by stories I'd never know. "I was homeless once," she continued quietly. "Years ago. Before the companies. Before the boardrooms. Before the security details." She paused. "No one helped me. Except one woman," she told me. An old woman at a bus stop who wrapped her in a blanket and stayed until dawn. A woman who asked for nothing. No name, no story, no repayment. "That night changed my life," she said. "And I've spent every year since looking for that same spark in others." He turned to me fully. "And tonight, Charlotte, I saw it in you." A warmth spread through my chest. Slow, gentle, unfamiliar. Recognition maybe. Belonging even more maybe. "Why the cars?" I asked softly. She smiled. "To bring you home." Home. A word that didn't ache for the first time in years. We walked toward a sitting room with a crackling fireplace. She motioned for me to sit. "You're safe here," she said. "And tomorrow, if you're willing, I have an offer. Something that will change everything." Outside, snow continued falling softly, peaceful, relentless, like a blank page settling over the night. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from my sister. "Mom's freaking out. Police are looking for you." Another from my father. "Come back. Now." I turned the phone off. This warmth, this moment, this safety. None of it belonged to them. For the first time I felt the future shifting. Not because they pushed me out, but because someone else opened a door I never knew existed. If you've lived anything like this, tell your story, and don't forget to subscribe. The woman looked at me, eyes kind and steady. And I understood something I had never felt in my parents' house. I wasn't disposable. I was discovered. Some doors close so better ones find you.